Alrighty. Hello, happy Saturday. Saturday. A day. Happy today. Welcome. Hope you all are doing well. I have a few hours before I need to exist and do stuff. I also learned something cool today. So I have these two buttons on my gaming mouse at the very top behind the scroll wheel that if I click the most forward one, my mouse movement gets faster. Whereas if I click the one further away, toward the back of the mouse, my mouse movement gets slower. I've had this mouse for about, probably since 2017. I did not know those buttons did that. I am sad at my discovery. I mean, cool as fuck, but very sad at my discovery here. We're gonna give a crisp crack of the Pepsi real quick. Very nice. Dilly dilly, here's to breakfast. But I hope again you all are doing well today. I have to go to work tonight. Originally 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., now 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. I also need to find time to take the driver's test somewhere at work tonight to operate large equipment, because apparently that's a thing now. Didn't have to do that at Southwest. Didn't have to take a test for the SITA, my airport security badge and shit. Like, I didn't have to do any of this. This job is very thorough. But anyways, hello. We were able to cover me on Tuesday 11th. 8:30 to 1. I can pick up 1 or 2 of yours next week. I don't want to. I don't think I'm allowed to. I'll have to respond to that in a bit. I really don't want to work Tuesday. I feel like I have something going on Tuesday night. Like, I think I have something going on Tuesday night. Anyways, but, howdy Chris, welcome. But yeah, so, forgot what I was saying. But anyways, so we're jumping in here today. We're going to be working on the Kaldvann, some. Going to be probably working up in, Hasvik a little bit. And, as the description states, we're going to be talking a bit about the, Orkanger Voyage. And a bit about Kaldvann's, founding and discovery, and then of course, whatever might so happen come after that. So, of course, once, you know, once the game actually decides to load, like, actually, I think I'm dog sitting on Tuesday night. MMA is questionable, considering they blew up a town. Alright, so yeah, I see I hit the button with my mouse and it's everywhere. And I hit the back button, and it gets slower. Said I did not know this button existed. Anyways, yeah, so we're back here in Hasvik. I haven't done a whole lot since last time. I don't know what you guys saw on stream opposed to off stream, but I worked a bit on the Hasvik Transport Center and Lufthaven, or Lufthaven. Or the transportation center and airport complex. Mostly just kind of getting the parking lot built up. I gotta run one single stripe through that, as well as that, and that. Got the basic layout of the small parking lot over here for the airport, and just kind of populated some vehicles into it, which I love. The this is called C-Car. He has a few different variants. I might check and see if there's any more, just because I like these cars. I wish he had more, like, different brands. You know, and maybe just kind of, like, not souped-up versions. Like, he has some Audis and some BMWs, but his Fords are all, like, the Escort Cosworth, which is a rally car. The Ford Focus RS, which is, you know, kind of another rally-esque car. Another Sierra Cosworth, so, you know, kind of just like rallies and stuff, and then he's got some like higher end Euro luxuries, which, you know, is cool, but at the same point, like I said, it'd be nice if there was some, you know, just basic models and stuff like that, like stuff that you'd actually see a little more frequently than, per se, the high-end models. It would seem my mountain has disappeared. I do not appreciate that. I must see my mountain. Because, like, this view is cool. Like, you got the rolling hills, but, like, it's supposed to be a fucking mountain right there. We gotta look at the mountain. Like, Odin gave us a mountain. We're gonna look at the mountain. Ah, okay, never mind. So, that's actually the actual view because there's nothing over there. So over there, however, is what we need to look at. So look at that. Now look at your mountain. Now look back at the plains. Now look at this mountain. Now look back at the plains. But yeah, so we can work a bit on Hasvik today if we so wish. I kind of finished the town itself. Kind of getting the town mostly put together. I don't really have any other buildings I want to do. I raised this up. So it's will actually serve as the seawall or breakwater. I need to do this one and that one, and then I place water down at the appropriate height. So yeah, so we can work here, or we can move along the main line, um, and the Odin I make the Odin I believe in, not Odin from the AM server, probably much to his dismay. Um, made a small bridge here, small little river, kind of flattened out the sides a little bit. There's gonna be a little waterfall here as the little river kind of goes back towards pretty much just up through here. I worked a little bit on putting in a wall right here. It's just very basic and such. I'll put some rocks beneath it and whatever. And then I just kind of edited the line coming through town. And I just kind of need to get it to come through here, and then what I'm probably going to do is, instead of coming along there, is I'm probably going to curve it more to the left and have it just kind of ride the side. Either that, or I'm going to angle it more to go, so we'll have this kind of tunnel this way, and then it'll tunnel through here, and then we'll pop out on the other side, and then it'll curve left over these little waters. Probably maybe try to go through here. Then the line will come up. Line will come up and it will branch off. So the right track will go towards Hasvik, and the left track will branch off to go towards yes, making tunnels. And the left track will go off towards Narvik and points north, or points east. I'm sorry. So we could do that because we're actually fairly close, and it would connect up to the bridge, which then I can start pulling down to connect up to the national, or the rest of the rail system, which is over here, which I need to finish this station over here. Name the town, too. I have a lot to do, basically. Like also finishing this mountain, which I don't think would be a terrible idea. I think we could start with that, making the mountain. I do enjoy some terrain work. But that would give me time to start talking about the Orkanger Voyage. Hold on, I'm hitting buttons on my laptop. Give me a second. Sorry, hitting buttons. Alright. So, we'll work on this mountain, do a little bit of terrain work, then we'll do some track work, and so on and so forth. But, you know, I want to jump in and talk about a bit of Kaldvann history. I have been kind of typing a little bit. So I've gotten a little bit of actual history and quote-unquote lore actually kind of put down on paper and into words. So in order to understand how Kaldvann was established, we kind of have to go back to central Norway, or just parts of Norway, in the mid to late 1500s, and even realistically before that. You know, we kind of have to really look at Norwegian culture and, even in their case, folklore. Now, dating back generations, there was always tales and stories of this faraway island, known for its fiery volcanoes, and of course, children's tales talked about ogres and dragons roaming this land, but primarily about this distant land that only the gods knew about. You know, this is a place where the gods would run away to, and many would often speak of it as an extension of Valhalla. You know, over the years, the gods collected their treasures and often would hide them or misplace them here. So there was tales of this great land with untapped natural beauty and resources that just lay somewhere out in the ocean, much further past where most charts really covered. So no one really knew where this land was. Some fishermen from Iceland and who had made voyages around Greenland had spoken that they had seen the island and they had been there themselves. But there was no actual physical proof of this land's existence, and that these men who often told this story were drunk at the taverns and inns late at night in between voyages. So there was no legitimate proof that a place actually existed such as this. So the stories and tales of what would become Kaldvann inspired many generations of young children, and often filled their heads with thoughts of, these great giants, dragons, and volcanoes, and treasures, and even the gods, in most cases. But again, most only considered this land to be fictional. It was not an actual place. So we start getting into the I'm sorry, another text message. So we jump back to 1562, and a young man by the name of Sven Eriksson, no relation to Leif. I actually didn't realize this till later on. Sven Eriksson, when he was brought into the world. Sven grew up amongst a seafaring family in Orkanger, Norway, which sits in the Trondheimsfjorden, which is, in the same body of water shared by Trondheim, as the name would suggest. He came from a long line of fishermen, shipbuilders, and just people who lived by the sea. Now, young Sven was told the stories of Kaldvann and, or what would be, except become Kaldvann. This place actually had no name. He was told these tales, and it lit up his imagination and his eyes with just wonder, and he often dreamed of becoming a great explorer. Fortunately, his family didn't take his thoughts and aspirations seriously. But, being an Eriksson, name spelling a little differently, but being an Eriksson, he aspired to be similar to the great Leif Erikson, who was famed for his great explorations. So there was some similarities and such, but again, no direct relation between the two. Now, young Sven was the only son of his father, and one of only 3 boys within his family's bloodline, or immediate bloodline. Between his dad and his dad's brother and stuff. There was only 3 boys to carry on the name, so young Sven had a very large task of carrying on the family tradition of being a fisherman. So he felt he had very big shoes to fill, and his parents did put a lot of pressure on him to fill these shoes, even though he had no interest in fishing whatsoever. Young Sven, again, he often dreamed and spent his days just admiring the sailors who got to go far away to distant lands and make trade and go discover things. He wanted to do that. So pushing through his youth and often being forced to go out with his father and fish or spend time with his uncle and learn how to ship build, Sven, when he got into his late teens, began hanging more and more down at the port and talking with the crews of ships that were making larger journeys and such, and he continued to feel his dream, and those sort of people became his mentors, teaching him how to read navigational charts and read the stars and plot a course and really how to uh, operate a large ship, not these small fishing vessels that his family owned and operated and constructed. So pushing into 1583, the young Sven found himself down in Trondheim, uh, sailing a newer vessel over to Trondheim for a customer. When he, decided to stay in the town for the night, uh, he made his way down into the what is today the older city, and found some people talking about the tales of this distant land, the tales he had heard from his childhood. Now, the older gentleman who was telling the story claimed he had been there. He had stepped foot on this land, and that this place was actually real. It was full of what everybody said. It was full of all these treasures and just very fertile land and such. Sven's eyes lit up. He lit up just in ways that had not occurred since he was a kid, and the gears started turning in his head. Hold on a second. Mal is messaging me. What is Mal messaging me for? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Poor Mal. Anyways, so his eyes, had lit up like they hadn't in years. His family had spent such a long time crushing his dreams, and making him realize that these ideas of exploration were not realistic, and he had an obligation to his family. Now, Sven being in his 20s at this point, 21 to be exact, yes, issue with Mal, or issue going on in Mal's world, but I'll talk about that another time. Hold on a second, I must reply. Um, so he had an obligation to his family, but obligation be damned, he was going to achieve his dreams. After all, life is short, and what's a life? What's it to live a life, that somebody else made for you and not one you made for yourself? So in 1583, Sven started putting together the idea of sailing to this land. Now, it was a pretty crazy idea then, and people made sure they told him that when he started pitching the idea. He first ran it by some friends of his, and they all laughed and said, "You're crazy. You're gonna go and sail away to this place of fairy tale." You know, um, and of course he was determined. There was some proof that this place existed, and some people do attest these claims that if you sail west, hugging Iceland and Greenland the whole way, upon leaving Greenland, if you sail approximately by whatever bearing, I suppose, within a day or two you would reach this fabled land. So there were people that spoke of it. Now, people had tried before to find this land, and like I said, they had ended in vain or disaster or even death, trying to find it. Raging storms and shortages of food, miscalculations, running off course. Just okay, Mao is having some major issues that require a chainsaw. choose. Your cat. Okay, glad we established this. Now, Toby, why do you only bother me when I'm busy? You're not bothering me, but you're a cat. You know, so people weren't too keen on the idea, but nevertheless, you know, Sven was determined. Now, there were some people, in particularly Trondheim itself, of some wealth, who were particularly interested in seeing to that this young man's dreams of exploration came true. And after all, there was some proof that this place actually does exist. And, you know, what would it be to them if they were to possibly fund such an excursion? You know, what's the worst that they could run into? You know, potentially they could sail far west, realize there's nothing there, and maybe make port in Greenland and Iceland and make trade there. So there were some people willing to invest in the excursion, almost possibly riding off the fact that it would fail to further benefit some other personal gains, but nevertheless. So people started to fund or give assistance to the project by the end of 1583 going into 1584. And once people started to get on board with the idea and the notion of the project and the exploration trip, more people started to take Sven a little more seriously. There was some credible investors that, you know, were actually taking an interest in his idea. People, you know, who others respected and deemed logical. So once people started hearing that, Sven's idea became a little more realistic in a sense. He actually had a way of at least achieving or getting to his idea. Now, money is a very powerful thing, and with the money that Sven was willing to put down to build a boat, he contracted his uncle and his family to build the ship, who at the same time weren't incredibly thrilled with the idea, but money is money, and money puts food on the table, and Sven, you know, did claim that he was trying to help support his family, as his father had intended. So his family couldn't argue too terribly much with the logic. Sven more or less left out the idea that the money had to be paid back at some point, as this was more a loan. Alright, oh Jesus Christ. So, anyways, he kind of left out the idea that the loan had to be paid back at some point, or there were stipulations to the loan. So his family began building a ship a few years later, or approximately, let me see, I wrote it down here. Yes. So in Sven's diary, it was noted that on the 19th of March, 1584, the hull was laid, or the keel was laid, and construction of a very modest and simple vessel that could carry a decent amount of cargo and supplies, as well as approximately 40 to 50 passengers, was to be constructed. Now, Sven, who had spent years being ridiculed for his crazy ideas and schemes, didn't expect a whole lot of people to join him on the voyage. He did have some people showing interest and wanting to start a new life. There was too much competition in their trades, and they were hoping to potentially make a name for themselves elsewhere. People in trades such as blacksmithing, woodworking, even other fishermen, as well as fabric makers. They were looking to make a start somewhere else. So, thoughts and ideas of a new prosperous land was pretty enticing for some of these people. So, so the hull was laid. in 1584, and construction was completed. Let me see, because I lost it. So yes, the ship was officially completed in February of 1586. So it took a little under 2 years for the ship to be completely constructed, and upon its completion, the ship would span 81 feet from bow to stern. It wasn't luxurious by any standards. It was a very modest-looking ship. It had two main sails with a series of additional smaller sails. I forget the term exactly for that. I did a lot of research last night, very tired and defeated from work. So the ship was completed, and it was completed only 5 weeks before it set sail for the first time. Only 5 weeks prior to the voyage west for the first time. And on the day that it set sail, the ship received its name. When Sven and his family took the ship out, it was rather gusty that day along the Trondheimsfjorden, so the ship would be named Der Raske Vinden, or the Swift Wind. So the boat officially received her name and would make port in Trondheim and wait there for the voyage to officially begin. Now, prior to this, while the ship was being constructed and Sven was going around recruiting or advertising the voyage, more and more people started to become very interested in his journey, and other people with the similar ideas who have heard the tales and legends of this land were very curious about joining him. Some people who had maybe messed up in life and didn't make much for themselves here were also looking to potentially get away, maybe start an existence somewhere else. Now, most of these travelers also were of pagan descent, and were starting to note the large Christian and Catholic population starting to pop up in Norway, and felt a bit rejected by society and the ways of Christianity, and were looking to escape a little bit. Though people of Christian faith did join Sven and the others on this journey, they were looking mostly just to kind of stretch out and find more room on this earth. And also another thing is the tales of this story dated back to very pagan roots. Again, this was a land said to be the home of the gods, such as Odin and stuff. So, an extension of Valhalla. So a lot of these people felt that this was a very large spiritual journey that many of them needed to, join and accompany on, and wanted to find this place for themselves. So now there was a way to go do it. So all in all, by the time everything was said and done, Sven had only anticipated approximately 40 to 50 people to join him. And by the time the voyage was due to set sail, there were 87 people who were ready to board the ship. 9 of these passengers were directly funding the voyage. Again, therefore, in their minds, personal reasons for financial gain. Because again, they figured the trip would end in, oh crap, we didn't find it. Greenland's not too far back that way, so let's go make port in Greenland or Iceland somewhere. And imagine the young man would lose interest and just settle for port in Iceland. Maybe, start setting sail between the two countries and opening up trade a little more. Thus, again, financially benefiting them more in more ways. So, but 87 people were going to be crammed into this ship. So, the ship really only had 4 real decks. Most of the space, though, was pretty much maximized for cargo hauling. So passengers would kind of have to just figure it out when they were aboard the ship, and figured out they did. Though accommodations weren't luxurious, people did kind of cram into wherever they could. Crew quarters also weren't the best, as Sven and his family really had never built a ship intended for people. They had really only built ships intended for fishing, so crew quarters weren't the biggest. They were definitely cramped, but Sven didn't see this as an issue. You know, he felt, well, my people are going to be cramped in this ship, I may as well as be cramped as well. So, the voyage officially set sail from Trondheim on the 17th of April, 1586, and took about a month and a half to sail from Trondheim and eventually make landfall over in the fabled land. Now, along the way, it was noted in Sven's log, the captain's log of this ship, that the journey was rather uneventful, and he was kind of disappointed over the lack of excitement on the journey, and noted that him and a couple of crew members, there's about 5 different crew members on board this ship, also didn't bring a whole lot of crew. Him and his crew members had often heard the tales of great explorers and the trials and tribulations that they faced, you know, the great epic journeys and such, and, you know, Sven was kind of hoping for a similar fabled tale, you know, battling raging seas and, you know, successfully piloting his ship and navigating it all the way, you know, never putting anyone's life in danger, but just a little bit of excitement. They really only ran into rough seas about once or twice in the journey, and the journey took a little longer than originally anticipated, because the prevailing winds kind of died out. You know, the winds still favored the direction of travel, as well as the currents, but the winds really didn't help much, so there were days where not a lot of headway was made for Sven and the Voyagers. But spirits and anticipation were extremely high aboard the ship. This probably due, in fact, to the notion that they, you know, weren't running into many issues, such as raging seas. You know, the ship wasn't damaged in any way. So so Sven and howdy Beard, how are you doing? So Sven and the passengers, you know, like I said, their spirits were kept very high as the voyage went on. At one point, sailing close to Iceland, as again Sven intended to do, he intended to hold close to Iceland and hold close to Iceland and Greenland, and then follow a navigational bearing in hopes of just eventually running into this land. But after sailing a little close to Iceland, some of the passengers aboard the ship became overly excited and almost forced Sven to make port in Iceland, thinking that they had discovered some new land and stuff like that. That was it. Not quite the case. But thanks to a steady hand and a determined will and a true explorer's heart, Sven was able to keep the ship on course and calm the passengers, and eventually, let me see here, on the 29th of May, 1586, the first sights of what would to become Kaldvann started to peek over the horizon. Now, Sven was a little off course. He was a little more to the east of where they intended to be, but the tall mountain peaks of the eastern ranges began to peek up over the ocean top, which were the mountains still covered in snow, stuck out like a sore thumb, as many would describe it. So, need a sip of Pepsi. But with a few simple course corrections and a change in direction, as well as the strong prevailing winds, they were able to quickly head towards this new land. And most of the passengers aboard the ship were stuck on the top deck in absolute awe as the beautiful landscape began to approach them closer and closer, and there was just a large sense of pride all aboard the ship that, you know, these were potentially some of the first people to ever see this land truly, at least in their eyes. Right, hold on, let's see. So, need to drag out this side a little more. Also, let me tell you, making mountains in this game, it's fun, and if you focus, you can get some good work done. It's a pain in the ass, I'll tell you that. Like, it's just a right old pain in the ass. But nevertheless. Now, Sven originally wanted to make landfall a bit more in the southern portions of the island. He was hoping to start in the south and then maybe work their way north in hopes of finding a good port or a place to at least lay anchor and make toward the new land in a smaller vessel. But unfortunately, the winds did change direction on him as they got closer to the island. The winds off the mountains wrapping around changed their course a bit north, and Sven, who was a little preoccupied with the sights of the land, didn't have the best time handling the wind, so he allowed the winds to take him on a more northerly course for the island. Still heading in at least in the right direction, he wasn't too bothered by this. Eventually, he would wrap his way around the north side of the island. If I were to zoom out here, if the game wants to load. He'd eventually wrap his way around the north side of the island, passing through, if my voice wants to stay with me, passing through some smaller islands here, and wrapping his way around to the northwestern corner to the smaller island up here. Eventually, he would make port outside the mouth of a large river, which is referencing the Nainadelva. And the party would officially lower a small rowboat to row in toward land. Oh, hi, Tobes. What are you doing? Get some gunk in your eye, buddy. Toby says hello to the chat. He just let out the daintiest little meow in the world. But they would make landfall here and sail up to step foot on back then what would be this smaller island right here, just off the coast of what would become present-day Trondheim. Now they were about 30 to 40 yards out from the shore when a breaking wave caused the small rowboat to capsize, tossing Sven and a few people into the very cold waters, which is how legend says it, how Kaldvann partially got its name. Because once they emerged, it is said in several tales of Kaldvann that Eriksson emerged from the water shouting, Kaldvann! Basically cold water. And that is a little bit of foreshadowing to how this land got its name later on. Nothing in Eriksson's diary ever insinuated to the fact that he was indeed cold, but it is led to assume that the waters of the North Atlantic and the Labrador Sea, which are predominantly very cold, would cause one to say such things. But again, nothing was ever proved. upon setting foot, on the land, there were already some issues, as no one had really thought about what they were going to call this place. Again, this island or set of islands mostly existed in folklore, and even back then didn't really receive a name. No one had ever really called it anything. Now Ericsson, who was from Orkanger, wanted to name it after where he had grown up. After all, he was the explorer, so he started calling it Orkanger, or Orkanger, if I could spit that out. However, he was the only person from Orkanger, as most folk there didn't really see a reason to set sail on a long voyage to find a land that potentially didn't exist. And were very content on staying right where they were. So he was the only person from Orkanger. Many of the folks who had joined him on the journey were from Trondheim or other parts of Norway. Many names got thrown around, and this caused a bit of a dispute between the passengers and even Ericsson himself. Again, who felt that he should be the one responsible for naming it, because he found this land. But in many eyes, they were all on this journey together, and they should all agree upon a name. Now, some of the investors who had backed the trip felt it was their responsibility to name the place, and many of them had come from Oslo or had been educated in Oslo. So early on, it was decided that the settlement should be called Ny-Oslo, or New Oslo. Again, with this wonderful naming series, as many great explorers back then are so great on looking at the rest of the state of Maine in New England. But nevertheless, a few names that got tossed around were Eriksonvik, Nysitjordal, Nidoya. Particularly Nidoya was a more popular one, as the voyage had started at the mouth of the mighty Nidelva in Trondheim, and they felt that this land should be named after where they started, Nid Island, more or less, which that name still gets used a little bit in even modern Kaldvannian culture, particularly for other parts of it, though. Nidelva is what is the river is named that passes through Kaldvann's Trondheim, as well as the inlet that passes through the north side or the south side of the Settlers Island is called, or Nidsundet, if my pronunciations are correct at all. And I'm a little nervous because I have a Swede watching. A Swede with a very epic beard, by the way, who might be lurking over there just a bit. I don't know. He might be lurking. Jesus, I feel like I've done more. Because I've already been talking for a while, and I haven't done shit to this hill. I suppose it takes a while. But anyhow, so amongst these names, and none of them really sat. So, and this mostly all occurred in the month of June. June was pretty much the month of no names, as no one again could really officially decide on what to call this place. Now, many of these residents were starting to think, well, if we're going to call it a place that we're all familiar with the Trondheimsfjorden. We're all from that region mostly, or we all lived there. That's where this voyage started. We're not going to call it that, but we might as well as just call it Trondheim. We all just left from there. Most of us, yes, are from there, so that would favor many. But again, it is name of the large body of water that we all live amongst. So, maybe we should just call it that. Trondheim was a very more favorable name. Again, that's where the voyage did start officially. So it was settled upon that. So the official settlement of Trondheim was formally established in July of the same year. Um, Now, going beyond that, many were still little, or at least a small portion, that were still upset over the fact that, the name of the settlement wasn't paying tribute to where they were from. And particularly one person who was a little salty over this naming bit was Sven Eriksson himself. So the folks who had all agreed in a democratic fashion to settle with Trondheim decided that Eriksson should have some credit over the voyage, considering he's the one that came up with it all, and decided to officially name the journey the Orkanger Voyage. Um, Anyways, so the Orkanger Voyage was officially decided upon for the name of the Great Journey. Now, going beyond that, the first months were pretty straightforward. Structures and dwellings began to pop up rather quickly. Being very modest structures originally. Mostly established around where the present day, I forget the name of that district, but most of where everyone established was along this portion of the island down here, and pushed on further from that and settled along the riverbanks. Oh man, I didn't even do this side of the mountain yet. Christ. Guess I'm going to have supper. Buffalo Wild Wings. Should be fine. I should have plenty of time. But anyways, so, but like I said, the first few months were pretty straightforward and pretty successful. That summer of 1586, which Kaldvann does receive a summer. It's not entirely cold all year round. The summer was fairly mild, the good weather, and which allowed peoples to start planting some crops. Now, plenty of supplies have been brought to support a small colony for a short period of time, but crops were needed to grow fairly quickly to hopefully support some people. More supplies would be brought back on a later voyage. As of September of 1586, a group of experienced individuals, as well as most of Sven's crew, or all of Sven's crew, made the journey back to Trondheim to deliver word that the journey was successful and pick up more supplies. With the prevailing winds, the journey should only take about an additional 6 weeks to and from, as long as everything worked out correctly. And would be back at least in 3 months, just in time for winter. On the second journey, a good chunk of livestock was brought back, other foods, building supplies, other materials, as well as another 30 people joined on the expedition to Trondheim. So now the colony was pushing just a little over 100 people. 117 people, including Ericsson himself, were now unofficial residents of this newfound land. And we're all very excited. Many were quickly setting up shop. Others were quickly establishing homesteads and farms. Others were quickly establishing, some as successful fishermen of the area, as the waters surrounding Kaldvann were very plentiful with large schools of fish, haddock, cod, herring, and other such stuff, very accustomed to the fish that were being caught off the coast of Norway. So fish was a large staple of the Kaldvannian diet pretty much from the get-go. The land also being prone to volcanoes also was very rich and fertile for crops, and provided some of the best crops that a lot of the residents of Kaldvann had ever harvested in quite a long time. This very, very fertile and rich nutrient land here on the secondary island. Just absolutely wonderful, and many who had come from pagan descent figured that this land truly was designed by the gods and was home to the gods. And we're very thankful for their harvest. Those of Christian faith were very thankful for God for showing them this land and making this year's harvest a good one, and providing for safe passage and voyage over to here. And we're just happy to start their new life. Chop this hill off just a touch, just to fill in this so I don't get a weird gap or bump later down the line. Just to focus on what we're doing here on screen for a second, like I said, we're just making this mountain that sits on the Settlers Island. I forget the Nordic translation off the top of my head. So we're just going to call it by its English name, the Settlers Island. So we'll be calling it as such for right now. So we're just creating the larger peak here on the island, trying to get some of that built up so I know how to kind of go forward. Because the thing is, like I said, I want to wrap the rail line along the coast over here. I want to redevelop this coast just a touch. Like, I'd kind of like to suck this in just a little bit. Either that, or maybe make like a smaller mountain that's kind of protrudes out into the coast, similar to kind of how some parts of this island have kind of established. If you look here, like, there's just parts that stick out, and it's just mountain. So I kind of would like to replicate that just a touch up here. Also, I need to stick the large airport somewhere, as I don't want to get rid of my large traffic circle that I made, because, Christ, I love it. Plus, we need to have the international airport for our guests and travelers to land at, as we don't really have a large airport. So it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 tiles. So it would fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drive. It would fit very nicely in here with a east-west facing runway and not very many mountains in the way over here. So provide a nice journey, but I need to get this mountain sucked in so I know where exactly I can stick the airport that would sit close to what I think what is known as Warrior's Port. I need to redo parts of this as well. Like I said, the main goal is to get the rail line extended down, redo parts of these tracks, and then get this line sucked in all the way. So like I said, we're working with this. 2 inner lines are freight, and the 2 outer lines are for passenger. So need to get that established, but like I said, I can't do that until I have this mountain, which actually looks fairly nice from a distance. We need to get this mountain finished. And like I said, then we can kind of lay down some track, because it's going to be this mountain, some kind of smaller hills around it. This is kind of the prominent one, and it would be kind of flat along the... Oh, shit. It's going to be flat along the... Oh, shit. It'll be flat along the coasts, as, again, I've been taking a lot of inspiration and look from the Icelandic island, and particularly speaking, what I'm guessing is the lava plains. Keep the coastlines relatively flat, particularly along the southern portion, but there are some pretty flat sections of the island as we push on. Let's fly across the sound. Now I wouldn't mind this kind of curving a little bit, and there being a small body of water right here. I wouldn't mind that. The Ricers just went by my house. A pack of early 90 Honda Civics just went by my house, and God, I heard them coming. But they looked to be in good shape, so that was kind of cool. Now, getting back to early history of Kaldvann, and that's kind of something I want to do a little more, by the way, on these streams in particular, is just kind of talk about a section of history of Kaldvann. And eventually I want to do officially the series as I do like an actual video that gets uploaded to my channel, talking about parts of the island, and setting up a scene, or just kind of doing aerial panovers of, sections of the island. If I could yawn. But yeah, so the first few months of the Trondheim colony, like I said, we're fairly straightforward, and pushing into the fall, the new settlers were astounded by how great their harvest was, and were just absolutely blown away over the fact that this land existed, that this wasn't a lie, that, tales they had heard all through their childhood actually were true. Minus, of course, the ogres and dragons, and no visible signs of higher beings being on this land, but nevertheless, at least this place existed, and that they were here. They were the first people to be here, and that their names would be etched forever in history, so as long as the next few years were to go well. Wow. As long as the next few years went fine, the harvests continued to be bountiful, um, things would be fine, and that their new lives would begin here. Now, pushing into the next few years, I did rewrite this just a touch because it would make more sense. Now, we kind of have to go back just a little bit to when Sven Eriksson was looking to get this voyage underway, or looking for support. Now, Eriksson, living in Norway at this time frame, was living in Denmark, Norway, the two respective countries forming a greater sphere, I believe, under the Oldenburg monarchy, if I remember it correctly off the top of my head. He wrote to, respectfully, both Oslo and Copenhagen, looking for support from the crowns, respectfully, to support this voyage. He put forth what little evidence he had making claims to this land. But much like everyone else, everyone just kind of laughed at him over his claims, and both Oslo and Copenhagen were not willing to support such a foolish adventure. If he wanted to go out and set sail and find this land, then he may do so, but he would not receive their blessings or their financial support for this excursion. In the end, Eriksson was the only one laughing, as he recalled, putting or asking for support from his governments, with promise of, if this land was found, it would be a colony of theirs. But he had more or less nothing to prove to anyone other than the fact that he had found this land. And upon the second voyage back to Trondheim, he made a bit of a side journey down to Oslo, with the proof and the proclamation that he had discovered this land that he had formally requested to them to help him find, and that if they were willing, he was hoping it would become an official colony or a official territory of Denmark, Norway. Well, Sven would get his wish in 1588, approximately 2 years and 3 months after the landings. So in August of 1588, the colony of Trondheim was officially established and recognized by the Dano-Norwegian governments, and would start to set up more runs to the island, formally supplying it with goods, with food, as well as bringing more people who were in search of a better life elsewhere, as the tales and rumors of this very fertile land began to circulate. More and more people were looking to find this land for themselves and make it their own. So in 1588, more and more people began making the journeys over, though not quite in large numbers, which, in many eyes were more than fine. And most of these people coming from mostly central Norway, but folks from Denmark did start to find themselves making the journey west. A small party from Iceland also made the journey, as well as the Faroe Islands, to seek out what exactly was going on here, and to also potentially start a new life for themselves. So 1588 was a big year, pushing into the latter half, as the population had gone from merely about 125 people to about 210 in a very short time span. This, of course, being the last major population boom in the Trondheim colony for a considerable amount of time, at least for the population to go up so sharply, so quickly. But the colony, which was quickly expanding outward, still very rural in many eyes, was seeing a bit of a population boom. So, people began to come over, but the local businessmen who had wanted to make their fortunes over here, because there was too much competition elsewhere, were starting to see the benefits of their risks starting to come in. I forget what the exact term I'm looking for is. They were starting to reap their benefits, or reap the reward of their risks, I guess is what we're just going to go with, because I can't think of the term off the top of my head. My mind's still shut off for the day. Let me see. That's kind of as far as I got, I will admit. I typed most of this up from about the time, about halfway through my shift at work, to about the time I got home. I typed this till about, actually the time I went to bed, so I was fairly tired when I wrote most of this. But that, in a nutshell, kind of picking over the bits and pieces we do know. Earlier history is not something that's very, very well documented. Something I do wish to go in depth just a little more. I do want to refine more of this kind of early history as I go along, because this is something that I am, hoping to do as I push forward. I kind of got the rough outline for the kind of the settlement of Kaldvann put forth, as well as some foreshadowing to how Kaldvann got its name. Again, the folklore of Ericsson and the 10 individuals in the rowboat falling over was something that I've always stuck by. That is definitely a bit of lore that I've carried for quite some time with developing this land. Was, how did this get its name? Well, in true Jayden fashion, because this sounds like something that would happen to me or that I would do, I would probably fall out of the damn boat, like 30 yards from shore. In this most glorious, epic moment, I'm going to be the first person to step foot on this piece of land. I fall out of the boat. Like, that is something that would happen to me. And I'd just be sitting there shouting something really stupid and random. Fuck! Cold! Holy shit, this is cold! God damn it, this water is cold! Wow! Would be entirely something I would shout at someone or something. Sorry, just trying to think of what I'm doing here exactly. anyways. um, but again, so I'm kind of just trying to do a test run over how exactly would all this work? How exactly, did this place come into existence? And that's just a brief outline. And most of the early history, like I am going to get into depth in a couple of the subjects, particularly the winter previously, which was the winter of 1588, which is now the winter of 1591, that killed a small chunk of the population, which, I mean, isn't a whole lot of people, but in this small, fragile stages, in this country's kind of incubus-y stage, it's notable. Particularly something that I will focus on is the discovery that the volcanoes are still active on the island. The major eruptions, or major eruption of 1605 that decimated the town of Hovden, as well as the first community of Hasvik, and so on and so forth, which then subsequently pushed the settlers back to the small island off the main island, and kind of made the main island off limits for almost 100 years, or a little over 100 years. Another part of the history that I'm going to be looking a lot into, and also an area that I also need to put more bit of a filler into, is there's a stretch between 1619 and 1665 where not a whole lot happens. Like, I haven't drummed up anything major, so I'm gonna have to kind of look and get creative with local lore and history that was going on at that time, particularly within Trondheim. What was going on, within the towns themselves. What major happenings were occurring. As the Christians and the pagans kind of begin to take their foothold, there's going to be a power or a struggle for, which religion comes first. I did feel bad the other day. I was talking to my friend Ingvild, and I was kind of telling her about my recent transition out of Christianity and being a Catholic, more or less. I kind of felt like I insulted her a little bit, because I was kind of fed up with Christians and Christianity, and I kind of just made a very broad topic, mostly referencing people here in the States, particularly from personal actions, kind of forgetting that she's Christian. I kind of said all Christians just suck. I'm so sick of them. And she's like, I'm Christian. I'm like, okay, well, not you. Obviously, I don't hate you, but, particularly here where religion takes a foothold into almost everyone's everyday life, in a place where we're supposed to be free of religion, or have religious freedoms, and not one religion rules us. It's noted that one religion kind of dictates our everyday life, and I'm not particularly fond of that. But the point being is that, there's probably going to be a period in there where, religion starts to kind of become a controversial thing within the island. The Christians, which are growing in numbers, are starting to arrive, and the pagans, who originally left Norway as Christianity started to become more the norm, were a little put off by the fact that they kind of just followed them, and were a little annoyed over this fact that this was occurring. And as the religion of Christianity was kind of being forced upon them, it kind of sparked some conflict. All-out war? I don't know. Some persecutions. And just more or less just some smaller minor issues. Because also, particularly if we go forward to 1810 through 1824, when the Acadians, or the French colonists, were attacking the Norwegian settlements closer to the colonial border. This was known as the time of the paganist raids. The French colonists who would arrive were fearful of the Norwegians, for they had heard things, and they had seen things that to them seemed very hellish, and they were kind of terrified, and they felt that these heathens needed to be put down and taught a lesson. So the paganist raids, as they were officially called, occurred between 1810 and 1824 in Kaldvann. It was a very dark period where I still can't think of the word, because I know there's a word for this in French. I just can't remember it for the life of me. I can't think of it for the life of me, but point being is that there were a lot of these French settlers were being led in these kind of almost cowboy-style attacks, or like Wild West-style attacks, that maybe we're familiar with out of these Old West movies and such. But they're being led on these kind of just very Old West-styled attacks. What's up? Against these small farming villages, and they were very, very brutal. I mean, at first it was just a lot of looting, lighting crops on fire, just kind of hit and run tactics. But by the time the 1810s, 1820s rolled around, there were killings, there were massacres, there were beheadings by these bloodlust crazed individuals who deemed themselves holy warriors, or they were doing divine work of God, and were just running rampant around the Kaldvannian countryside, decimating these villages. And it created a large issue, so much to the fact that what could be considered the militia of Kaldvann stepped in and captured these individuals, pushing into the very early 1820s. So the 1810s and 20s were actually a very major time of conflict in Kaldvann, and something that I figure I'll talk about now, I suppose. So we had, I guess to kind of explain this, we have to go back to 1779. This was when Norway and France both established a joint colony. Now, France had kind of got shafted, as previously mentioned in my last live stream. The Norwegians didn't really make a whole huge mention that, oh yeah, we haven't lived here in over 100 years, in terms of the main island. They were all pretty much stuck here on this old island, which is a big reason why Trondheim is very dense. Because Trondheim built up instead of out. Not particularly back then, as, building up instead of out haven't quite become the thing yet of urban sprawl, but, it was a larger community for Kaldvannian standards, but all of this land laid unoccupied by the Norwegians. It was up to, I believe it's this river here. This river here divided the French and Norwegians, so the French got basically everything down, and from this river and this mountain pass over, which there's not a lot, because I'm going to bring this coast pretty much in. It'll probably extend over to here, and then I'm going to bring it in. There'll be one more smaller island that I'll develop right here, and that's it. So the French didn't have a whole lot to work with. They didn't go much past that river, because as they were pushing up towards it, they saw volcanoes erupting, and they're like, yeah, no, we're cool. We're great. We're going to stay behind this river. this river will serve as our protection, so we're not going to go anywhere further than that. So that served as more or less the colonial border, and is still referenced as the colonial border today. Every road crossing that goes over this river has both French and Norwegian flags flying respectfully on either side of the river. But the Norwegians claimed that everything else was theirs because they were here first. And again, as I mentioned in the last stream, many of the Norwegians kind of actually wanted the French to just leave because this wasn't theirs. But it's not quite how that works. So the French kind of got shafted in a sense and didn't really make out well when the joint colonies began. But France, didn't want to stir the pot. These people were here first. They had been here for such a long time. Norway wasn't about to kick these people out because, they were just hoping to keep what, they wanted, and it worked out. So everyone was fine. But it wasn't even 2 years later, or even a year later, when the British began to assault the port of Castine in, kind of payback for assisting the American colonists in the Revolutionary War, or as the war continued on. That was kind of the British's way of flipping off the French. As the French did use Castine, their small settlement, as a staging port to deliver goods to the colonies in the United States to kind of help with the war effort. So there was the British assault on the port of Castine in 1780, and then the British siege on Castine for 1781. Which the siege only lasted for. It lasted for quite a while. In all, respectful manners. It went on for some time. Right, so I think I'm gonna stick something in here, or I don't know. I'll probably just bring this over. It went on for quite a few months, and then as the British needed to keep most of its fire support in the Americas, the siege stopped going into 1782. The Revolutionary War ended. Kaldvann in 1800 was recognized the official colony name for Norway, while Castine was still referred to as the colony of Castine. So there was, really that only bit of news was kind of the only bright spot in the next or new decade, more or less, or millennia. But going into 1801, 1802, moderate eruptions began, and again, as I mentioned last live stream, this was kind of setting the tone across the island. In 1804, 1805, England came back and fought in what is known as the British-Acadian War. In this war, like I said, as I mentioned last time, so this is just kind of a recap for maybe some of you who were there, but for those who weren't, the British-Acadian War, the British did make landfall in Castine. They made landfall and captured the freshly repaired port city, and pushed the small French garrison out. Most of the defenders laid in the countryside anyways, kind of quote-unquote minutemen or militiamen, more or less, and were able to form some very poorly defended lines to keep the British from advancing. Eventually, the British pushed the French all the way to the colonial border, and what was looking like to be a swift victory for the British ended in a bit of confusion. It was not thought that the French would push across that border, as there could be some Norwegian retaliation. The French didn't give two fucks. I choke on air. The French essentially didn't give two fucks, because their plan was to fall back across the border, kind of just inhabit and stay on the land of the Norwegians for a while. Uh, Basically, get them frustrated that the French are there, and then just get the Norwegians to get involved and help push the British back, because England didn't want to have a war with Norway, uh, or Denmark, Norway, more or less. They didn't want to piss off their or infringe on what was theirs. So England was pretty keen on not doing that, and the French knew it. So the French pushed back across the border as basically, haha, you can't get me, and sat there. Eventually, the Norwegians did take notice and were like, hi, could you guys, I don't know, not? To which the French were like, no, we're kind of stuck here. Like, can you guys help? The Norwegians and Kaldvannians were like, no, but you guys need to go. Like, go back to France or something. Get some help from France. Have you thought about talking to France? France, like, what's your guys' thing? Like, I don't know, talk to them. Like, what are you doing here? Eventually, it did result in the Norwegians getting fed up, because the British actually said, hey, Trondheim's way over there. The Norwegians surely wouldn't notice if we came across the border just to take care of the French resistance and then, claim this side of the island as our own. We won it, it's ours, so we're just trying to rid the French out, so the Norwegians surely won't mind. So the British came across the colonial border, thus stepping foot onto Norwegian soil, and subsequently pissing off the Kaldvannians, who fought back hard. The Kaldvannians originally did get pushed back beyond the French front lines, but once the might of the Norwegians started coming down, they were pushing back the overextended British all the way back to Castine, and pretty much back to their ships. This kind of pissed off the Norwegians, who had to get involved, and upon this getting back to Castine, we're basically told, hey, thanks, guess we'll just go back to the status quo. You guys can go home now. And the Norwegians are like, no, you guys suck. We did all the work. Whatever. The Norwegians were a little pissed off. Is a nice way of putting it. But the French didn't seem too interested in, retribution, paying anything back, any damages done, because, the Norwegians were fired upon, buildings were damaged, crops were destroyed, people were pissed, families were a little scarred, children were traumatized, things happened. War happened. So the British-Acadian War officially ended in June of 1805. Now, as the next 5 years went on, tensions between the French and the the Castilians and the Kaldvannians definitely heated up. There was still mentions of the British-Acadian War. There was a lot of small-scale border clashes between mostly pissed-off farmers and drunken individuals who lived close by. At this time, border crossing, which wasn't highly promoted, but was allowed, often resulted in some Acadians making their way into Kaldvannian taverns and inns and whatnot, and vice versa. Words would get said, feelings would get stomped on, people's bodies would get flung about as people were getting tossed. Bar stools and chairs would get broken. Barkeeps would be very unhappy. Their stuff's getting destroyed. Typical good old rumble-tumble style bullshit going on. I'm gonna take these textures and I'm gonna bring them somewhere else. How about that noise? I'm just trying to. Also helps if I, were to. I got a piece of asphalt or something like that, or I think I did. I'll just grab a small box like that. Of course, I'll retexture the water where I need to. Yeah, this kind of was starting to become a problem, and with each passing brawl, with each passing conflict, the issues kind of became bigger, more or less. Again, these textures aren't going to stay. I'm just getting down a base, so I'm not looking entirely at grid, because I'm sick of seeing grid. As well as the dark blue texture, which is kind of annoying. It's not the best texture work in the world, but it's something. I will, like I said, do more later on. I just need to see what the damn terrain is and what work I need to do with it. Also, I just don't want it to be dark blue the entire time. But, as the years went by and as the brawls continued, they just kind of grew in ferocity. People became a little more ferocious with their attacks. They were definitely looking for some bloodshed. And with each passing week and each passing brawl, and the growing complaints from the tavern and innkeepers, the respective colonial governments started to take a bit of notice. Now, the Kaldvannians were a bit more responsive to the situation, saying, well, we need to, this can't persist, anyone who is caught to be brawling will be, heavily punished, stuff like that, sentences, stuff like that, fines, you'll be responsible for any damage by the innkeeper and whatnot, whatever. The Castinian government was a little less responsive to the situation, and didn't really take a whole lot of action, more or less. They were fully aware of what was going on, but it wasn't bothering anything or anyone in Castine. It was just drunken people settling their differences. So, who are they to step in and tell them to not be drunk or upset? It's, it is what it is, and plus the Kaldvannians don't really have a reason to be upset. It's all, they're all upset over things that have happened in the past. The past is already in the past. Let's move on. But we push into 1810, and again, the Acadians had always kind of viewed the Norwegian colonists as heathens. Many of the farmers in the rural communities were split between Christianity, but a large part of the population was of pagan faith, and still made prayer and offerings, and still worshipped the Nordic gods. So the French, who were very, very Catholic, more or less, were a bit less than pleased by this. And in 1810, on the night of October 14th, the first paganist raid began on a small unnamed village. Because again, I'm not there yet in terms of my history. But on October 14th, 1810, the first paganist raid began on a small farming village, home to probably a couple dozen or a few dozen people, no more than 30 souls in that town. The first raid was again fairly simple. People were beaten up, people were thrown from their homes. Crops were simply just kind of trashed, animals let loose, valuables were stolen. And it was a very hit-and-run style tactic, a very hit-and-run style, why am I still texturing? Very hit-and-run style maneuver. Get in, cause a stir, get out. Is basically what happened. And this occurred for the next few weeks going through October into November. And with the winter and the heavy snowfall, brought some peace and quiet amongst the Kaldvannian countryside. People were a little on edge, as, this was unprecedented, and mostly uncalled for, or entirely uncalled for. So people were naturally a bit on edge. But nevertheless, people's lives moved on. Just freak accident, more or less. By the time 1811 rolled around, went in spring, the raids continued again. Sparse this time, never really occurring in a pattern, never really occurring in any form of consistency. They would occur one week and then be done the next, and then they would occur on this day, and then they wouldn't happen for a while. So there was no sense of consistency with these raids, so it was hard to really predict the movements of the raiders. And many people were not quite sure who their harassers were, who these people were at all. So they were a wee bit confused, more or less, over what exactly was going on here. Usually the raids would happen in the evening or at night or in the early morning hours, usually under the cover of nightfall. And generally speaking, would just happen very quickly. It was always by a large force, and it just caused a lot of issues, more or less. People were paranoid, sleeping less, but these raids, no one knew a whole lot about them. They don't know where they were coming from, where they were going. People even in Castine weren't entirely sure, and those who did know were very sure to keep their mouths shut. As, again, this was considered a, kind of a move by the divine hand of God. This was coming from the church. This was, an attempt to expel those devil-worshipping heathens out of this land. And it was also an attempt to force the Kaldvannians from where they were established in an attempt to fill the void of what they left behind. Now, something that the Castinians didn't know was that there were Christian groups amongst the population. Now, the Catholics and the Christians throughout history never entirely got along, often fighting a war that spanned 30 years, which is famed in a Sabaton song that I fucking love. But nevertheless, the Castinians were not quite aware of this. They figured all these people worship the same thing, they're from the same place, so, they all must do the same thing. So there was just blind attacks going in without much research or knowledge over whomst they were attacking. They just heard one thing, they knew one thing, they were going to stick with that one thing. But the raids continued, and like I said, as the months and years went on, the raids turned from hit-and-run tactics to more personal tactics. There were people becoming severely beaten. Instead of people being dragged out, kicked around, punched, just belligerent behavior on a wide group of people, the attacks became more personal and targeted. Not toward a specific one person, but usually it would go from an entire community to more or less one or two households per evening. There were rapes, there were severe beatings, there were mutilations, there were limbs being cut off. This was a pretty devastating time to live in, along the colonial borders of Kaldvann. The people were just becoming victim night and night again, and word started to get back to Trondheim, and more and more militiamen were starting to get staged in the countryside. More of the army, more or less, was getting staged in the countrysides. Now, the Castilian fighters were definitely taking note of this and kind of targeting towns that weren't receiving much protection, because there was only so many people that could be in so many places at once that, once troops would start being set in those towns would become free, and eventually the troops would get pulled, and then they would go right back to that, because the troops would basically be responding to the actions. It was kind of like lightning strike. You can only respond to where you're needed once it happens. You can't predict where it's going to go. And again, these attacks and raids were not happening in any particular order or fashion. I think it's enough mountain work right now. I'm going to move on before I drive myself crazy. One thing I did want to do was move the airport. Now the airport sits at about 14. Where does the land over here sit at? And can I, no, don't zoom out all the way, you dummy. No. Back up. There you go. Go over here. Alright, yeah, right over there. Good job. That's 0. That's sea level. That's 15. That's 6. That's 14. So I guess the airport's going to kind of sit over here. It's actually going to be in kind of a depression. That's a mood. That's a whole ass mood. I remember this taking a while to copy and paste. Yeah, I'm gonna do that off stream, because I remember that taking quite a while. So I guess what I will do is continue to extend the rail line. So I guess we'll get this Y going, more or less. and take this over this way. In hopes to kind of get this to more or less line up with the towns further beyond here. The terrain gets a little funky over in this section. This is going to be kind of where our harder area to operate in. Now, one thing I do have to figure out exactly is we need a rail yard somewhere, because we don't have a rail yard. You know, there's no real major rail yard out here for the freight line, which is kind of a problem. Now, there's not a whole lot of major commerce back up in here. I do imagine the port, there to be a port somewhere down in here, so there will be a small branch that comes off this way with a yard that sits at the port. But I guess more the main yard would be somewhere down, potentially this way. The rail yards aren't giant, per se. I think the largest one being down towards Castine, as that's the major connection point for us. But at the same point, hold on a second. Howdy, David. Alright, so I just need to take a look here and see. So, I also need to find a tunnel that will support double stack intermodals. So let me take a look and see tunnel. Because we need to be sure that double stacks can get through here. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's certainly a tunnel, but that's not happening. It's nice. I don't know what the fuck's going on there, though, but that's not happening. Oh, it forms to the grid. That's stupid. That's horrendous. I hate that just because it does that, but let's just see what happens here. Okay, okay. That's a thing. Huh. So that easily fits a double stack, so I guess we'll keep that in mind. Oh, I hate that. So I'd probably be apt to use this one just because it actually kind of works. That's horrendous. No. It's the only thing I hate about trains sometimes. I think we use this for, that was it, ORE. I think we use this on the CBVR. don't believe the 53 or the double stacks fit. No, they don't fit, which is going to be a problem because that's kind of how we move shit around here. What was I doing? Tunnel. What was I doing? I can't remember at this point. HP tunnel track. It's just track. I'm gonna kill it. I might have a sneeze. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I didn't bother Toby with that, so that's good. That's horrendous. And that is horrendous. So I think we're gonna go ahead and narrow it down to this. So I think we have our winner. Ding, 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 ding. Alright, let's see here. So, also something else that we have to keep in consideration is where the is this? Oh, wait, that's gonna be there. Okay, don't look at that. That's 31. This is going up at about a 2%. I don't like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and lower you. So we can do that instead. So what is this grade now? Okay, sure. You are a... Oh, beautiful. Hello. Alright, so that's over here. So I just want to, I'm not going to keep it, but I just want to see. Oh god, what is that curve? That's not terrible. It's not bad. Okay, it's not horrible either. I will probably keep this. Probably will cut that off. Herbst. So there's the butt. Actually, fucking I'll just do that. Give me the other track. Thank you. Alright, so that sets the grade to be... Now, supposedly it's still going to be set to that. Whether it actually stays at that, I haven't a clue. But now all I need to do is just go ahead and do... Toby, stop sleeping on my keyboard. Dig. No. Oh, yeah. Dirt. No, it didn't put the tunnel in. Oh, jeez. So I guess we have to go do it all over again. Alright, so let's see, go out of that again, give me a dig hole. Back to decor. It's gonna be one of these. Oh, shoot me. Alright, I'll figure out rockage with that. While we're also here, I'm gonna go ahead and lower this because I get this bad feeling. Because I kept that level, it's gonna fuck with the grade a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and go up. Just slightly. Alright, so we got the dig hole. So now all I need to do is... Oh no. Bring this down from here. I get this slight feeling I'm going to be going that way, because if I were to take a look at this... Go away, please. So if I were to swing over this way, if I were to... So there is that. Now let's take a gander here. That's gonna be a big grade. Yeah, it's a 4.18%. So if I were to, let's just see. Alright, so if we were to set this to be, let's just say, a 2% grade, let's actually make that -2. So that's going to bring that up to here. Up to here. So, I mean, we can get down the hill quickly. It's just we're going to have a big, obnoxious fill here, which I don't particularly want. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be... It's just a bit more than I really want. I would rather kind of go out this way and then bring it in. More of a personal preference, honestly. So I think we're going to do that. We're going to go out and then bring it in. Oh, excuse me. Actually, we'll shallow out this grade sum, so we can actually make that a -1.5. Now I'm going to need a curve radius, so I got to get this line around that and back up this way. So we'll actually go ahead and delete this, since that's not going to be needed anymore. I'll delete all the way back to there. So we're going to cut this lake off here, or this little pond area, or whatever you want to call it. Let me see. Curve. 750. Yeah, actually that could work. It's wide enough to where, you know, not to worry so much. Just lower that down a bit, though. I will say this is probably one of the best tools that I've been shown for trains. Okay. Get out of here. Whoa, 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 whoa. Why are we doing that? Why are we in the invisible track? We don't need to be invisible. Alright, we'll come to here. Plop it. Slide this over to her. So we'll chuck that up here. And we will bring it in as such. Let's see. That's a big grate. Wow, imagine that hill. So I feel like this will be on a bit of a fill, just because it's just kind of how I feel it's gonna go. So yeah, so that's gonna be the big curve. Oh, and it crosses a river on a curve. God damn it! Why does that always happen to me? Ah! Why? It always happens this way. Okay, that looks like it curves. Oh no, it just goes down really wildly. So minus 1 point. Are we sure that's how that's gonna work? Oh, I see what's happening. I see what has been occurring today. Uh-huh. Ah, yes. Okay. I don't think we have to go down that much, so we can actually raise that up some. So that's gonna go up a 0.8 because your mom. So that's my reasoning for the afternoon. Have a great day. So this is gonna be kind of an area that I'm not too particularly pleased with. I'll probably put like a. I don't want to fill the whole thing in. I might put a bit of a bridge. I don't know. Because that's going to be a big fill. Like, if I were to fill that right now. Like, it's not the worst thing I've seen all day, actually. It's tall, but I guess it'll work. So I guess I'll be fine with that. Yep, still trying to get this dem figured out a little bit. Alright, so that's going to go up. So that's going to be 15-1. 17. Are you kidding me? It's actually caused, yeah, so that's a 0.86. That's a 1%. Grades really aren't too bad here, so that's good. There's supposed to be a tunnel in here. There it is, eventually popping into sight. Why couldn't it be like this dig hole? Christ. Is this tunnel going up, by the way? It's going down. I wonder. So the tunnel is indeed going up. How about instead we keep it at a level down? I don't think it really improved the fill much. It really didn't. mean, this will work, so... Then I'm gonna raise this up more. So I'm gonna raise this up just a little more. 0.56, 0.28. I'll raise this up as well. And I get to come over here. Oh. I don't like that, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do Aziz minus, let's just say 0.8. We're gonna go back down to 0.8. That's a fill. That's a fill. I don't like fills. Fills. How about we just go down a 1? We'll just go down a 1, okay? I don't like very large fills. Like, this should be okay. Let me see. So, I think this is already going to be a bit higher than I want for this particular, yeah. So if I could get it down to about there. If I could hold it to about, shit. Only thing I hate about this. Hello. Alright, so I think we'll have to come down a bit. So that's on a 1%. If I drag it down. That's going to give us a 1.93. I'm not offended by it. Truly not. So that'll be good. That'll be fine. I'll get rid of this big curve radius too. I will have to go here in the next few minutes. I guess I gotta start getting ready for my day. Oh wait, no, I didn't want that. I wanted... Nine. So that's going to push this grade up even more. Yeah, 2%. It's not the worst. So I will do tall fills and embankments. I just don't particularly like them. They're not my favorite thing in the world. Now the only thing now is to get back up the hill. So that's going up about a 1.5. It does a weird jog thing that I don't like. So we're actually going to go ahead and get rid of that. I still think I went to the left. Let me see here. Can I move you? Let me move straight. Okay. Yeah, so I'll get rid of that. Why are you curved? Gosh dang it. $16.68 opposed to 20. Oh, fuck. Why? Okay, so I think it's going to be less offensive to the eyes. That's going to be less offensive as well. Okay. Hopefully this will all work out. Alright, and we have officially connected the line up to the bridge. So this is the other major river crossing, or the only major river crossing for the rail right now. So just to kind of follow it along, it's going to go to the left too, because it's going to go towards other towns eastward along the line. So we're going to come down. And I'll look at these grades later and make sure they all actually are doing what they're supposed to be doing. A fill alongside a lake, which would be kind of nice. Making a large right turn to go back up a hill, which the grades actually aren't terrible. Tunnel coming down into this town, which I've yet to name. I've carved out the ocean, so we ride alongside the ocean. And of course, this all looks horrible and hideous and ugly. I have yet to do anything to actually make it look pretty. Now we come down into Hasvik. Pass through the station. Leaving Hasvik, approaching Nidsunda. And we start the climb out towards really the other side. So, and the tracks, I believe, end right about here. Yeah, we're going to look ahead to some of the terrain that we're working with. So it's hilly, but it's pretty relatively flat here as we look up towards the mountain here, Dekis Meltafiel. Might change that name later on. We'll probably, the coastline's there. Either we'll go to the left and follow just the easy terrain, or we'll keep to the right and kind of work our way around. But the terrain gets pretty easy over here. Now, something I want to do back up this way, particularly on Settlers Island, is I need to get some industries planned along here, because I do want some industries close to the city, and I will figure out what exactly I want, because I do want a paper mill close to town, and I do want a couple other small kind of major industries, like a large-scale sawmill, some smaller lumber yards, places to load fish and stuff like that. So I will need to kind of figure out what to do there, because there is a place before the crossover, in particular, that I could take the freight line and kind of go off towards the coastline, particularly over here. So I probably will do something like that. I could throw in a small yard here. I could. I don't think I will. But I do want a small line to go over here, go this way and such. I was trying to think of a way to maybe get that line to wrap around and go over here, and load some fish into here from from this section, or maybe even come across twice and then up behind these buildings to some older industries that used to be here, or at least just represent that in an old way. The line used to go back here in Trondheim, which we'll take a look at Trondheim here since we are here. I know we haven't been here in a while. It's a lag fest, though. It's actually been kind of nice not working in Trondheim for once. It's been kind of nice just to get outside the main city and just kind of do work elsewhere. Oh, look, my sidewalks are disappearing. That's great. That's cute. Hate that sometimes. All the time. But anyways, I do need to get ready for my day and get ready to get some dinner. So I'll leave you guys with this. Sorry for cutting it off so abruptly, and sorry for not making this entirely a history lesson as I intended to. Just kind of ran out of steam and needed to focus. Today was not a day that I could do both at the same time. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoy your weekend. I'm off for the next 3 days after this. I will be busier on Tuesday, but I am off for the next 2 after today. So I will hopefully talk to you guys at some point between now and then of course next week my work schedule remains the same. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. and then Saturday, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. Shoot me. But anyways, I will catch you all in the next stream. If you liked it, please hit that thumbs up button. It really helps me out. Just kind of lets me know that the people who do watch this at least are enjoying it. If you have any comments or questions about Kaldvann itself or its history, or if you have any suggestions for pieces of history that I could work in, or other world events that maybe I'm missing that could affect Kaldvann, or influence how Kaldvann was shaped, do let me know. I would like to get a community going for Kaldvann and get some interaction around this. I might incorporate a bit of the lore and history into the Down East server. So if people want to join, particularly for Kaldvann, maybe I could utilize the Down East server for that in particular. But anyways, guys, like I said, do appreciate y'all for watching. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all in the next one. So take it easy.